Thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. This week I'm sitting down for a conversation with the Finnish photographer Maria Lax. I'm super excited to have her on the channel today to talk a little bit about her work and, more importantly, talk about her book, which is called Some Kind of Heavenly Fire. Maria Lax is originally from a small town in northern Finland, which is known for its UFO sightings in the 1960s. And that's essentially what this book is about. It's filled with very mysterious, colorful photos of really interesting light. And I'm super excited to chat with her today about the process of making this book and for her to talk a little bit more about some of the stories behind these images. So Maria is going to be joining me on a Zoom call today because she is in the UK and unfortunately I can't fly out there right now. But that being said, let's get into this conversation and I hope you enjoy.
So I'm a Finnish photographer. I'm from the very northern bit of Finland, so close to the Arctic Circle. But I've been based in London for quite a few years now. But I shot this project in the book in my hometown. And it's about mysterious UFO sightings in the 1960s that my granddad, who was a journalist, wrote a book about. And then I went back to where I'm from and started to investigate that.
Amazing. So I read a little bit about the project online. I didn't know that your grandfather actually wrote the book.
Yes. So he was the founder of the local newspaper. And when this was all happening in the 1960s, 70s, people were seeing mysterious lights that would like follow them home, or these bright lights would light up forests and follow people home. So I think he just saw a really nice subject for a book and he started interviewing people and kind of made like a journalistic investigation into it. And it very much is based on just eyewitness accounts and his analysis of the situation, what it could have been. Because at the time, it was quite a big phenomena for northern Finland. So Pentagon got involved and interested, and so it is quite a big thing. And he just covers the events from 1969 when it all started, all the way to book came out in 1972 when the UFO hype kind of died down.
Wow.
And he's trying to look for different explanations of what they could have been.
What was kind of the timeline from you finding your grandpa's book in 2013 to actually shooting this project and making your own book about it?
My background is in film. I'm not formally trained in photography or anything like that, so I did cinematography. It was 2013 when I read the book. I was instantly like, oh, there's something about this. But because I was kind of more considering myself as a filmmaker at that time, I thought I was going to make a documentary film. And so I set out to kind of go and interview people, and I did that for a couple of years. And then I started taking pictures. I think it was 2015 that I started photographing this project. But it was all storyboarding for a film. So I was like, I'm going to do funding applications and I'm going to make this film and this is how I want it to look. But I started posting those pictures on Instagram, so things kind of started taking off from there. But then also during that couple of years of shooting images, I was like, actually, photography is what I enjoy more. Like, I don't want to be a filmmaker. Like, this is how I want to tell my stories.
I hate to describe work as cinematic, but definitely your like transition from film to photo explains a lot about sort of the style I think that this book has and that your photos have. So that's super cool to hear. I'd love to hear a little bit more about the town itself. I know you don't mention the name of it specifically in the book, I think.
No, it's kind of like I'm partly keeping it under wraps. Out of respect. I mean, it's easy to find out, and a lot of people have gone on to find out. It's partly because of the mystery that it kind of goes with the genre of it. But it's also partly because the people in that town got treated really, really bad by media in the past. So there's a lot of trauma involved in the whole UFO sightings, and then telling them like their stories to me, there was a lot of trust that people place in me. So I don't want to like then go publicizing this work and be like, well, here's exactly on the map where you can find it, because they've had bad experiences in the past.
What was sort of the process of choosing locations to photograph?
It's some of them are quite specific. So there'll
Mm-hmm.
be like a road where a taxi driver who I interviewed, who was kind of
Mm-hmm.
like the first person to see the UFOs, would drive and see the lights. A lot of it was because I had all the time in the world, in a sense, when I was there shooting, and like light wasn't a problem because it was so dark all the time. So the sun might set at 3 p.m. and then, so I kind of had a lot of time to shoot. I would just walk around familiar locations, kind of where I grew up. There were places that I knew that I really wanted to take a photo of, that I've always loved. Like there's a petrol station in the book that, like, during the day you go past it and it's like, oh, it's just a little petrol station. But in the night when you see it, it's like this amazing luminescent thing. So, and there's a old hotel as well that I photographed. So there, I had a list of some things, and then I'd say a smaller portion is kind of like me just spending time outdoors and seeing what I can find. But yeah, it was just me by myself in the middle of nowhere all the time, and kind of just like trying to be clever of lighting as well, and how to light things when you don't have a crew. You can't really.
Yeah.
So like it was quite fun. And it's quite funny how far I've kind of moved from that, because now I use studio lighting and all of that. So
The biggest appeal of this book to me when I was flipping through it was like kind of this idea of what is the reality of this story and what is the fantasy in this story. Like
yeah,
what was the process like of shooting this, trying to make images that told the story, but was there also like an incorporation of your own interpretation of these mysterious UFO sightings? Because obviously you couldn't just photograph what the book was about.
yeah, it's a funny one. Like I've always been a huge fan of, say, Spielberg. Like my favorite films are like Jurassic Park and Gattaca, and so like very far end of entertaining. But then I also like documentaries. So as I was reading my granddad's book, actually, I went to interview some of the people, and then they were like, "Oh, that's not how I remember the thing to go." And I realized there's so many different layers of truth and storytelling already in the subject that then I may or may not have added my own layer of stuff to it as well. And then in the imagery, it was quite fun because obviously none of the stuff, you can't see it right now. So it was quite fun to then listen to what people, how they described the lights to me, like, oh, the whole forest was on fire and all of this, and then go and figure out how to recreate that. There's like somebody actually asked me if like why isn't there more people in the book, and
Mm-hmm.
why isn't like portraiture of the people and like more. But I kind of, I was talking to loads of people about the project, and as I was planning it, I realized that as soon as you see a face
Mm-hmm.
of somebody talking about aliens and what they've seen,
Mm-hmm.
people's attention goes from the story to judging whether that person can be trusted, or whether they're sane, or whether they're just making the whole thing up. I kind of want to protect the people in a lot of way, because again, like I said, it was about trust. But then I don't want anybody to get stuck on trying to determine if it's real or if it's not real, or like were they aliens, were they something else? Because like the book is the truth that I've been told, and the book is kind of my truth of the events.
That makes a lot of sense. I could totally see someone making a project about this story as well and photographing the people that you might have interviewed, but I like this sort of open, very ambiguous narrative with.
Yeah, and like I mean, like they might have fit, but I think like by the time that I knew that this is going to get published, and by the time Keith kind of picked the story up, it was so done. Like it's always like that. Like when do you know a project's done? But like I was kind of like, I was like, yeah, I can't shoot anymore. Like there's nothing coming out of me that I feel like is like necessary.
Yeah, that makes sense. I've
Um,
always found that way is just the best way when you keep going back, but nothing new feels like it is happening.
exactly. And like if I would have added the portraits that I shot, it would have been somebody else's project. Like it just didn't feel like me, and it didn't feel like the story how I wanted to tell. So
It's a whole different book. Um,
yeah,
You do have some people in the book though, not necessarily portraits, but there are people. How did you go about making images like that?
I was shooting a lot, so I kind of was that annoying person who was walking around everywhere. Like, even if my family was just having coffee, I'd have a camera and I might just snap something. So I've got loads of like pictures of my family members as well. That was one of the approach. A lot of them again didn't make it into the book, but I was kind of shooting them like anonymous. Partly because I wanted to, because it's a family story in a lot of ways. So I was like, I want to find an aspect how to put my family in it as well. And then like I went through a lot of archive as well from the era, because I did my, the family house full of albums. So I started kind of going through the albums because I wanted to have a bit of texture and kind of like context of what the time looked like. And it was like blending in different layers of the story. So there's some of the shots of the people are then from family albums.
Yeah, once you had your photos, what was it like blending it with all these archived materials?
I think because I'd worked on it for so long, I had a very specific idea of how stuff should go in and how I want it to look like, and what kind of bits and pieces. Like some of the black and white photos in the book are mine, just to kind of like take the edge off the archive, so it's not like that obvious. I mean, maybe it is.
Guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Maria. I will have a link to her book, which is still available, in the description, and I'll also have her Instagram linked down there. Finally, I want to say thank you to you for watching, thank you to Maria for joining me, and thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. Squarespace is an incredible online website building platform that you can use to build your photography portfolio online. I've been using Squarespace for over 3 years at this point, and they've been incredible to host my portfolio and also have an online store. Their customer service is incredible, and it's super easy to get a website up and running with their customizable templates. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, you can hit the link in my description for a 14-day free trial of Squarespace. And when you're ready to launch your website, go to squarespace.com/Willem for 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain. That's it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for joining me and Maria. I'll see you next Wednesday, as usual. Peace.